Okay, have you ever walked down a street you know really well, and then suddenly realized you're kind of unseeing something that's right there in front of you? What if that wasn't just you, like zoning out? What if the world you see isn't the only world there? What if you were actually legally forbidden from acknowledging things, even if they occupy the exact same space? Well, today we're diving deep into exactly that fascinating, really mind-bending question with China Miéville's amazing novel, The City in the City. Now, look, this is a book that, honestly, it feels like it should not work. You've got a murder mystery, but it's woven into this metaphysical paradox, and it's all wrapped up in a pretty profound political allegory. Our sources nailed it, I think, calling it Borges rewriting Chandler while rehearsing for a UN seminar on state sovereignty. It sounds kind of nuts, right? But somehow, miraculously, it works.
It really does. And our mission here in this deep dive is basically to pull out the core ideas from this incredible piece of, well, someone called it speculative geography, which feels right. We want to go beyond just, wow, cool premise. We really want to understand how it messes with our perception, Not just of cities and how they're laid out, but ultimately how it makes us question our own reality. So the goal isn't just seeing what Miéville built here, but really getting why it matters, especially today.
Yeah, why it hits so hard now. And to help us navigate this really intricate, brain-twisting journey, we've got a fantastic, really comprehensive review. It does a great job unpacking the novel's layers, from that audacious premise right through to the deeper themes. It's kind of our shortcut to the big insights Miéville is offering, so you walk away with a good grasp and maybe a few new questions yourself. Okay, so let's just jump right into the heart of it. Miéville asks us to imagine these two cities, Besźel and Ul Qoma. And here's the kicker, the really wild part. They aren't separated by like a river or a wall or even different districts. They are physically interlocked. What does that even mean? I mean, some streets are pure Besźel, some are pure Ul Qoma, and then you get these incredible cross-hatched areas. And in these zones, buildings, cars, actual people from both cities are occupying the exact same physical space. You could be walking down a Besźel street,
Right.
and the building on your left is Besźel, but the one on your right, Ul Qoma. Or you might see like an Ul Qoma bus just phase through what you think is your street corner. Yeah, it's radical.
It completely flips your idea of space. And this spatial weirdness, it comes with an absolutely crucial, really revolutionary rule. The people living there, they are legally required to unsee the other city.
Unsee, not just ignore.
No, unsee. It's not like ignoring a billboard you don't like. It's an active, enforced thing. Erasing it from your perception, to acknowledge the other city, like to look right at it, speak to someone from there, touch something that's a major crime. They call it breach.
Wow, okay. Breach. That sounds intense. How does that even work, like practically? And who enforces a rule that's about what you see?
That's where this shadowy kind of supranational authority comes in. They're just known as breach, with a capital B. Their whole job, their entire purpose, is to police this active ignorance, this unseeing.
A police force for perception.
Exactly. Breach is this mysterious, very powerful entity. And yeah, their whole reason for existing is to enforce what you don't see. Think about that. Not catching people breaking laws you can see, but catching people breaking perceptual laws. It's a really unique spin on state power, isn't it?
It really is. So the residents aren't just, politely ignoring stuff. They're actively unseeing. What's the kind of practical difference Miéville shows there?
Oh, the difference is huge. Critical, really. Ignoring kind of implies choice, right? Or maybe just neglect. Unseeing, the way Miéville lays it out, is this deep, ingrained conditioning. Psychological, cultural, it's learned behavior drilled into you from childhood. You're not just deciding not to look. Your actual mind is trained to filter it out, to process anything from the other city as just like background noise maybe, or a blur in your peripheral vision, never letting it come into focus. It's fundamentally restructuring how you perceive reality itself.
Okay, that's a lot to take in. And it's into this bizarre, super controlled reality that Miéville drops a classic murder mystery. It's almost like he's using the genre to show how fragile our sense of reality actually is when, a body turns up where it shouldn't be. So we find Miéville Aguirre, she's an American archaeology student, found dead in Besźel, but all the clues, the evidence, it strongly points to her being killed over in Ul Qoma. And our main guy, Inspector Tyador Borlú, he's with the Besźel Extreme Crime Squad. He has to solve this murder, and this is the crux he has to do, and without ever looking across that perceptual border. If he does, breach could just make him disappear.
Yeah, and what's so fascinating right from the start is how this just smashes our own assumptions about space, about belonging, even what we think of as real. Just try to imagine it. Having to actively ignore like half of your immediate surroundings, training your brain to just delete huge chunks of your world. And it immediately makes you ask, doesn't it? What are we unseeing, in our own daily lives? Maybe just because we've been taught to, or because looking is inconvenient.
Or uncomfortable.
Exactly. It's this brilliant, almost exaggerated version of every other kind of border we deal with. National, racial, class, social, borders that we learn to enforce ourselves, without any actual law telling us to.
Absolutely. You think about the ways we filter out news or people in our own cities, not because of some breach police, but just conditioning or bias. It holds up a pretty stark mirror. And Miéville's world building here, it's not just clever, it's so meticulous, so detailed. He doesn't really bother explaining how this crazy split happened. There's no big sci-fi backstory. Instead, he just dives right into the texture of it all, the feeling of the partition. We learn about their different alphabets, distinct clothing styles, even specific little hand gestures that subtly mark which city you belong to. And he paints these incredibly vivid pictures of the two cities themselves. Besźel is described as sepia, crumbling, Ottoman-inflected. It gives you this feel of age, decay, maybe a bit melancholic.
Old world feel. Right. While Ul Qoma is Bauhaus, neon, oil-rich. It's all modern, bright almost.
No.
Aggressive in its newness.
Yeah.
You can almost feel the difference between them, even beyond just the visual descriptions.
Those sensory details are just so important because they make the absurdity feel grounded, real somehow. And citizens, they're trained from when they're kids to unsee the other city. Our source calls it a curriculum of aversion. Think about that phrase. It involves things like classroom drills, public service announcements, even these sort of ritualized gestures, all designed to hammer home this perceptual divide.
The curriculum of aversion.
And the sheer absurdity of teaching kids not to see what's right there. That's the whole point. It's like a hyper-real exaggeration of all those everyday borders you just mentioned, national, racial, economic, whatever, that we as a society learn to enforce without needing laws. We just do it.
And crucially, it's not like the cities are totally separate entities living side by side. Even with this huge, metaphysical split, some things just have to connect, right? The paradox gets grounded in these wonderfully ordinary details. Things like shared sewer lines, maybe?
Exactly.
Or these crosshatch cafes where you could technically find people from both cities in the same room, but they're totally unseeing each other. So, when Borlú is in one of those places, is he consciously trying not to bump into an Ul Qoma person who legally isn't even there for him? The mental effort must be incredible.
Absolutely. And the reason the whole concept doesn't just collapse under its own weight is because Miéville anchors it in those everyday things. Shared infrastructure, common spaces. And Borlú's narrative voice, how he tells the story, is so key to making us feel this experience. He narrates in this clipped first-person present tense. It feels very much like classic detective fiction, Raymond Chandler style.
Hard-boiled.
Yeah. Right. He says things like, I walk the street, I see only what I am allowed. Very straightforward. But underneath that familiar detective rhythm, there's this deep Kafkaesque vibe, this sense of absurd bureaucratic reality that's just crushing. Every observation he makes carries this negative space, this deliberate absence. Like he says, I do not see the Ul Qoma tram that passes through my shadow.
Oh, wow.
It's a kind of negative ekphrasis, which is just a fancy way of saying description by not describing something, by describing its absence. Imagine trying to describe a room, but you're forbidden to mention the elephant standing in the corner. You describe everything around it, right, or the space where it is, creating a description through what's missing.
That's exactly what Miéville does.
Yes. With Borlú's language, it makes language itself part of the border, part of the policing of perception.
That's a brilliant way to think about it. And the whole atmosphere then becomes like a character in itself, a true noir in negative space. The tone feels perpetually overcast, even if the sun's supposed to be out. Streets feel damp when they're dry. Shadows feel like they're being watched even when no one's there. Traditional noir often mourns the loss of moral certainty, but Miéville here seems to be mourning the loss of perceptual certainty. You're constantly second-guessing what you're seeing, or maybe what you're not allowed to see. It makes for this wonderfully unsettling reading experience. And Inspector Borlú himself, he's the perfect guide through all this complexity because he's both complicit and skeptical. He gets it. He's internalized the whole unseeing thing so deeply that he physically flinches when a kid points across the street, an innocent gesture that could accidentally be breach. But at the same time, his basic detective instinct, his need to know, keeps picking at the seams of this whole elaborate illusion they're all living under. He just can't help poking at it.
Absolutely. And the novel's structure, it mirrors his journey perfectly. It reflects his own perception kind of unraveling. It kicks off like a classic whodunit, following the familiar beats of a police procedural, autopsy reports, witness interviews, that sort of thing. But every clue, every revelation, it doesn't just point towards a culprit. It uncovers what the source calls a deeper layer of ontological sediment. Ontological sediment. Okay, break that down. It just means each step in the investigation peels back another layer of reality itself. It reveals more fundamental truths about what it even means to exist in this bizarre world. So the first third, pretty much pure police work, keeps you grounded in the mystery.
Right.
Then the middle third, things shift. Borlú and you, the reader, right along with him, you're forced to actually physically cross into Ul Qoma.
Whoa.
Yeah. And that's where you really start to learn this new grammar of sight. You have to learn how to unsee what was familiar, Besźel, and start perceiving what was previously invisible, Ul Qoma. It's like reprogramming your entire sensory input system.
That sounds incredibly disorienting.
It is. And then the final third. It descends into this place called Orsini. It's rumored to be a third city. But it's not just another place on the map. It supposedly exists in the actual blind spots, the gaps in perception between Besźel and Ul Qoma.
In the spaces they unsee.
Exactly. It's described as a literalization of every state's unconscious. Which is a chilling thought, right? That there are these unspoken, maybe unspeakable realities hiding just beyond what we force ourselves not to see. A place that maybe shouldn't exist, but perhaps it does.
So his journey isn't just solving a crime, it's this radical shift in how he even understands existence. His arc isn't about redemption, really, it's about revelation. That's the word the source uses. To actually solve the murder, he has to effectively become breach. He has to finally see everything he spent his whole life training himself to unsee. And the source mentions a physical transformation. His pupils dilate, the way he walks changes, his voice even gets an Ul Qoman accent.
Yes, it's profound. What does that tell you? Identity itself becomes a kind of performance. It's a matter of jurisdiction, almost. It's defined not by who you inherently are, but by what you choose, or are forced to see and ignore. What collective stories, what fictions you agree to uphold.
So who you are depends entirely on these invisible lines and the stories you tell yourself.
Pretty much. Which makes you wonder about the lines we draw around our own identities, doesn't it? Even without a breach agency breathing down our necks. Ultimately, yeah, the murder gets solved. But the answer to who killed Miéville, it feels way less important than the cognitive map we have been forced to redraw by the end of the book. That new way of seeing reality that Borlú and hopefully the reader now has.
And beyond just the gripping story, this novel is just so packed with these deeper themes. They resonate far beyond the fictional cities, It really gets into some central anxieties we grapple with today. Things like the politics of looking, what sovereignty actually means, and the constant feeling of surveillance.
Definitely. Breach, the entity, isn't just law enforcement. It's described powerfully as the panopticon made flesh. You know the panopticon idea. From Foucault. This prison design where one guard could see everyone, but the prisoners never know if they're being watched.
Right, so they police themselves.
Exactly. And Miéville brilliantly literalizes Foucault. He makes it real. In Besźel and Ul Qoma, the border literally runs through your retina.
Through your eye.
Yeah, it's not just a fence or a wall out there. It's your own perception that enforces the border. The constant threat of breach, the fear of being caught seeing incorrectly, it trains your very eyesight to self-censor. You become your own prison guard, and your retina is the checkpoint.
Chilling.
It is. And Miéville, the victim, she isn't just killed by a person. She's killed by the system itself. A system designed to make certain bodies, certain realities, completely unseeable. So the ultimate crime in this world isn't murder. It's breach. Violating that fundamental epistemic border, the border of knowledge and perception that keeps the whole fragile system running.
That really reframes the whole mystery. And Miéville's use of language, it's another amazing layer. He invents words like other authors invent planets, terms like grostopically. That describes places sharing the same geographic spot but existing in totally different political realities.
Like two countries layered on top of each other.
Exactly. Geographically one, but politically, legally, perceptually. Worlds apart. And the official term for this bizarre, interlocked split between the cities, cleavage, which sounds so clinical, almost surgical for such a deep divide. He even makes their languages sound different, gives them distinct phonemes. So language itself becomes the first border, doesn't it? A constant audio reminder of who belongs where and who you're supposed to unsee.
It's incredibly layered. Now, one common criticism you sometimes hear is that all these cerebral fireworks, all the clever ideas can leave the reader feeling a bit cold. Borlú's inner life, it's true, is deliberately flattened. We don't get deep dives into his past, his personal feelings beyond his job competence.
Right, you don't feel like you know him intimately.
No. And some readers find that final part, the descent into Orsini, maybe a bit too abstract, too hard to grasp emotionally. But, and this is important, that emotional flatness is thematic. It serves a purpose. To feel too deeply, to form strong connections across the divide, that would be breach. So the lack of deep emotion actually highlights the psychological price of maintaining this unseeing. It's part of the point.
Okay, I can see that. The flatness shows the cost. But still, for some readers, that deliberate distance might make it harder to connect, right? With Borlú or even with the stakes of the murder itself. Is that a trade-off Miéville just makes? Does it always pay off, you think?
Oh, it's definitely a conscious choice he's making. And yeah, it's part of what makes the book so distinctive, maybe even challenging for some. It's less about following a character's emotional arc and much more about taking the reader on a cognitive journey, an intellectual one. Miéville clearly prioritizes exploring these huge, unsettling ideas over, say, traditional character warmth or development. And for a lot of readers, myself included, the sheer intellectual excitement, the way it makes you rethink things, the unsettling relevance of it all, that more than makes up for any emotional distance. It's just a different kind of reward, you know? Focused on insight, maybe, rather than pure empathy.
That makes sense. And what's really striking is just how relevant this book feels now, years after it was written. The City in the City has apparently become required reading in some really diverse academic fields, like urban planning, international relations, even surveillance studies. It almost feels like it saw the future, like it anticipated the era of filter bubbles, deep fakes, and algorithmic unseeing. Miéville was really onto something.
It's a stunning example of how fiction can shed light on our own time, isn't it? I mean, when you see news footage today, maybe refugees walking right past European cafes, and the people inside just don't seem to register them. The novel feels less like fiction and more like prophecy, sadly.
Yeah. Oof.
Miéville himself talked about the book being a metaphor for the violence of the gaze. And that violence, that power of looking or not looking, it's now being monetized, right?
Yeah.
By social media platforms. They literally train us to unsee opinions we don't like, to filter out perspectives that challenge us. We curate our own realities, actively unseeing whatever doesn't fit our narrative. The novel just shows us a sort of hyper-real, extreme version of our own curated feeds.
Wow. That's an incredibly potent connection. And it sticks with you. You close the book on the city in the city, and you almost find yourself testing the edges of your own vision. You might start noticing, really noticing, the homeless person you usually tune out on the subway, or those political posts you just scroll past without thinking, or maybe even your own neighbors whose lives occupy the same street as yours, but feel like they're happening in a totally different universe.
Exactly. And the novel, it isn't really asking you to go out and tear down walls, you know, in some big revolutionary act. It's simpler, maybe harder. It just asks you to notice them, to see the walls, the borders, the acts of unseeing in the first place. And the idea is once you notice them, really acknowledge them, the walls themselves start to crack, not with some big explosion, but just with the simple kind of subversive act of looking, of truly seeing. It's about recognizing how much of our reality is actually constructed.
And Inspector Borlú's fate at the very end, it's really provocative, isn't it? He ends up in this kind of exile, looking out at a horizon where both cities just shimmer together like heat haze. He literally can't tell where one ends and the other begins anymore. And Miéville seems to suggest that this state, this inability to perfectly draw the line, this breakdown of perceptual certainty, that's the first step toward breach. So what does it mean for you listening right now to maybe reach that point, to allow yourself to see what you might have been conditioned or have chosen to unsee in your own life? That's definitely a question worth chewing on long after this deep dive ends.